6, 2024 to order. The first item we have is Resolution 96-24, a resolution to amend the certificate and other sources and appropriations, increase receipts and appropriate from unencumbered balance in the police and fire levy fund. And that's coming from Safety, Councilman Bizjak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to say this is a simple piece of legislation. Every year the police department collects reimbursements from special events around the city, and this legislation essentially is going to allow an appropriation of those reimbursements into the overtime fund. Chief, I don't know if I'm missing anything but I believe that's the gist of the legislation.
That's it in very short summary, and if anyone wants further details, I can certainly provide those.
And it'll be 3 readings, and Councilmember Tiener will be my second. Okay. Thank you.
Chief, do you invoice these 4?
We do. As a city, we invoice the vendors. So the 4 major large-scale event, I don't want to maybe call them vendors, but maybe organizations, a more appropriate word.
Right.
We invoice those organizations, and they subsequently send the city the reimbursement, and that comes at $55 an hour, which we do take a little bit of a hit there with vehicle fuel costs and overtime and whatnot, but it's the best compromise we can make with the 4 large-scale event organizers.
No, I'm not questioning what you're doing, and it's wonderful for the city, and we need protection and all that. I guess I'm wondering why we have to wait until November, as in your email, when the organization had their deal in July or whatever. I mean, if they pay, we don't have to.
So they do, and maybe maybe in the email I didn't articulate it in the best way. By November, we would have had payment from all large-scale events, which would include the fair. The issue with waiting is the fair is our largest invoice, so if we wait till November, that's going to put you guys in a really bad position of having to approve legislation very quickly. So this measure is just to get this done early, to make it 3 readings, to make it smooth. That way, we're ready to go in November when we get that last invoice in.
Right, but going forward,
we can budget right out of revenue, yeah.
Okay, but I'm just suggesting that these organizations should be able to get you a check a lot quicker.
They do. The fair is, that wraps up about mid-October, let's say that. And so by the time they have all the hours and the checks are processed, we're talking early November. So that's why they're the last organization. Everyone else, Art Walk, Lancaster Festival, 4th of July Committee, they're within 2 or 3 weeks. It's just the fair takes up about half of the amount that we need. And so if we wait till November,
okay,
that can put us in a bind.
So it's just the one, not the others?
No, the others are fine, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
And we
My
will have,
question is on the $55 an hour. You said that what should it be if it's not 55? If 55 doesn't cover it, what should it be?
So that's a great question. What should it be? We could charge the vendors overtime, straight overtime, what our officers make. The issue is every one of our officers is going to make a little bit different in an hourly wage depending on where they're at stage-wise. And what we're trying to do is, because the events benefit the city as well, that's our best ability to get proper security staffing there, while at the same time trying to compromise with the event organizer and not charging them, $75 an hour, whatever it would be, plus the fuel cost, plus the vehicle cost. Because there are municipalities out there that charge fuel, charge vehicle, charge all of those items.
I guess my real question is, what does it cost? If it's not 55, do you know what it is? Is it 75? Is it 100?
I can tell you our reimbursements come out to about $75,000 a year at $55 an hour. If we were to charge actual costs, and this is just an estimation, I can certainly email this when I have more time to look at it, I would guess that we are well over $100,000.
Okay. I just
and how do we?
felt that everyone needed to hear that.
Right.
Okay.
Appreciate it. There's other businesses that use off-duty police. Now, how does that work? Is that different than this?
So our special duty rate is the same all across the board. It's $55 an hour all the way across the board. The reason that we do it for the large scale events is historically And I don't mean this as a hit or talking about criticizing how we did things in the past. I just mean historically, we didn't staff these events where they needed to be staffed. And I think you can look anywhere around the country and see the fallout of what can happen if you're not prepared. So what we did is the large-scale events that bring tens of thousands of people in one concentrated area, we have a few individuals at the police department that are very well-trained in large-scale events. They know the appropriate staffing that it takes. They know the structure that it takes, the format that you need, and they come up with a plan of how to staff those events. The issue is we're already working long hours. My officers already have to deal with quite a bit across the board, so it's not the most fun thing to go sign up for those events. So we had to find a couple of years ago a happy median of getting officers there and having the numbers that we need for 15,000 people in a downtown area, when those officers very well would want to attend that event themselves personally with their families, but also not kill the event organizers either. So what we do is we have city overtime. That way that gives us the ability to properly staff those events. And thankfully, knock on wood, we haven't had to force officers to work those events. We came up through the patrol division. They started a committee and they have a point system where they volunteer to work those events, and they accumulate so many points once they work an event, and then they don't have to work an event later down the road. So if you work 4th of July, you accumulate so many points, you don't necessarily have to go and work Lancaster Festival or the fair. So it's working out great. We're very happy with it, but that's the reason we chose those 4 events, because those are very hard events to get the proper staffing to, but it's needed. And you flip on your TV, you can see why.
And so you have, like the movie theater, there's an officer there.
Correct.
Does that whole process work the same?
No. So
How does that work? That's my question.
a smaller venue is purely special, what we call a special duty sign up. So if Regal, I don't know if it's still called Regal Cinemas, to be honest. Is it Cinemark or Regal? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Cinemark, if they want a special duty officer, they will contact us, and they have a standing appointment for that. We'll let them know that we have a sign up. We'll let them know of the officer that's working the detail. And typically those events go staffed, but there are times where we just can't find an officer to work it. And if it's a small scale, where we're just talking about a few hundred people, where it's just basically a security guard, not much else to it, you could have an event that's unstaffed. That is possible. But again, knock on wood, we've not necessarily had that issue with the smaller ones. It's not an event that we are going to force anyone to go
Right,
to.
so they're paid the same process,
Same process.
same account, same everything through the auditor's office.
No, same per hour, but some of the officers are paid directly by the organization. So say Cinemark might pay the officer on site in cash. They might pay them as a 1099 employee. They might pay them as a check at a later date.
Okay, I think I'm going to stop asking questions.
You're more than well. I'll answer them all day.
No, I don't like the cash deal, but that's another story.
Sure, that's very, very, very rare.
All right, thank you.
This may or may not be related. I saw a policeman, I was sitting at the red light at St. Mary's when the kids were going to recess. There was an armed policeman with them. Is that a normal, is that every day?
That could be any number of things. If we're talking about a recess, it's the start of school. I know our directed patrol unit and a portion of our patrol officers at the beginning and end of schools, they try to have a lot higher presence at some of these educational institutions. I know I was talking to Councilman Schoonover about this on Friday. We try to get out and interact at the beginning and end of school just because the parents are getting used to the traffic flow just as much as the kids are. So you might have been seeing some of that.
Yeah.
I can't pinpoint to what that specific one was, but that is it's a initiative that we have at the beginning of the school year.
Thank you, Chief.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next item is temporary resolution 97-24, a resolution to authorize the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract for construction of the Tiki Lane Booster Station Improvement Project coming from Water Pollution Control, and Councilman Wing.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is the final ARPA-funded project, if I'm not mistaken, and if Denise would like to come up and explain the project a little more.
Good evening, and I think you're right. I think this is the last one we're asking legislation for as an ARPA project. This is for the Tiki Lane Booster Station project. It is currently out for bid. So the second whereas is incorrect. We had pushed the bid date back to August 30th. So if that could be fixed before the legislation is approved. This will allow us to enter into a construction contract in an amount not to exceed $850,000.
Any questions about this piece of legislation? Councilmember Ailes will be my second, and you're asking for two readings.
We're asking for two readings on this one so I can get the contract in place before I go on vacation.
Okay, thank you. Next up, you're still there, so we'll do temporary resolution 98-24, a resolution to authorize the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract for construction of the South Water Plant Concentrate Booster and Pump Project, coming from wastewater.
Thank you. This is for the South Water Plant Booster Pump Project. This is a safe drinking water loan through OWDA, and it's in a cost not to exceed $3.7 million. This again will be opened on August 30th, not the 23rd. And this can go through readings because we can't enter into a contract until the loan is approved in October.
Good.
Any questions about this piece? Three readings, and Councilman Tino will be my second.
Good. Thank you. No
All right,
questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Temporary resolution 99-24, a resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance in the engineering fund 1900 for additional unexpected costs related to staffing changes and the addition of an administrative assistant position. Coming from Administrative Services, Councilman Lichtenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask if the Safety Service Director would address this one.
Sure, thank you. So our current administrative assistant in that department, we actually have three different engineering departments that are housed together that share an administrative assistant. We have our engineering department, the stormwater engineering, and the environmental engineering. That all three share the same administrative assistant. But the current administrative assistant, Deb Julian, will be retiring in January. She's already given her date. So what we would like to do is add a second administrative assistant to start hopefully by November so that they can train on the year-end budget stuff with Deb Julian and be there for the year-end budget stuff, learning about how all the different budgets work, and then be there for the beginning of the year to set up next year's budgets and training with her before she retires at the end of January.
Any questions? We'll go three readings on this, and you will be my second.
Be happy to.
Oh, actually,
All right.
I'm so sorry. I
Yeah.
do have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Well, I just thought something. So can they hire now for this, or do they have to wait till after this is passed? They can go ahead and hire now, right?
No, we would have to wait until after this is passed because it's not currently in the ordinance.
Well, with all that, this is going into September. This is
So this
something
would end up, if it goes three readings and you choose to pass it, that means it would pass at the end of September. At that point, we could post and then do interviews. We would post for 10 to 14 days, post, do interviews, and then hopefully have someone hired by
because if she's
the end of
retiring in-
October.
I'm just thinking of somebody having to get in there and to learn this, and that's what my concern is, because this is the end of the year now. So I don't know if we should suspend or make it two readings or whatever to get somebody in there to, I don't know. I'm just
I will leave
wondering.
that to your discretion as a council. I feel like I've already asked enough this year.
Well,
So I was
mean-
trying to give you all three readings this time.
Okay.
It's a small enough amount. I would have no problem going two readings if that makes sense.
To get somebody in there.
I'm fine with that.
Will you
Yeah.
have to change the 10,000?
Now, you have to change that resolution, depending when they're hired, or we'll
Yeah.
have to have legislation
Right.
when they run out of money by the end of the year.
So if we
Just so
make it-
you're all aware of that, that's fine, me, but
I just thought, because that's a lot to do, because she's got three departments, and it's not like it's a year ahead of, that's just,
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll change it to 2 readings then.
You request 2 readings. Any objections? Then we will do 2 readings. Well, now we're going to move on to ordinance 2824, an ordinance to amend the permanent ordinance 3323, the non-union pay ordinance. Again, coming from Administrative Services.
And this is for that very same issue, changing the ordinance to allow this to happen. So, and we'll go 2 readings on this one, and Councilman Bischak will be my second. Any questions?
Again, no objections on that. 2 readings on ordinance 28-24. Ordinance 29-24, an ordinance to authorize the mayor to accept 2.147 plus or minus acres of property identified as a portion of Fairfield County Auditor number 0535004000 from Serba Solutions U.S. Inc., formerly known as Retrieve Technology Incorporated, and to declare an emergency. And this is coming from the Law Committee. Councilman Kreitz.
Yes, thank you. Law Director Hall, would you be willing to speak to this?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So Attorney Brian Everett, who is here with us this evening from Dagger, reached out a few weeks ago regarding his client, Serba Solutions, who the city engineer was working with in order to determine how much right-of-way we were going to need for roadway expansion and traffic improvements. With regard to their expansion, I'm sure all of you have seen the publicity around the fact that Serba is expanding its facility. And so it was decided that 2.147 acres would be the amount to do that. And so we've been working on the quitclaim deed for them to dedicate that land to the city, because it is a property that they are giving to City Council in order to construct these improvements on. City Council has to accept it, but it's merely a formality. You're just accepting ground so that the city has the ability to add these traffic improvements for the expansion project. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And we're asking for 1 reading just to keep Serba, moving along in their process as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Wolfinger is my second.
Be happy to. And any other questions, comments? Next one is temporary ordinance 30-24. And I am not going to bore you with me trying to read all that. So, and essentially this deals with the prepaid gas deal that's on the books now. And I'm assuming, Law Director Hall.
Sure.
Discuss that.
Yeah. So all of the council members will have seen that I sent out a slightly edited version of this piece of legislation earlier today. But today, Royal Bank of Canada sent around a transaction timeline for the 24 gas prepay bond issuance, and they want to start pricing by September 26th. Going 3 readings with our legislation had us going until September 23rd, and then Bricker, who was the outside counsel who prepared the legislation for us, did not include an emergency clause because they thought we would have a 30-day window to allow this to become effective. But RBC is saying because of the favorable terms and market right now, they would like to be able to price as soon as September 26th. So we're just adding an emergency clause so that when this goes through and the mayor is authorized, they can start pricing by September 26th in the next 3 days. But 3 readings is fine.
Any questions? Obviously, that's coming from Finance Committee, and Councilman Ailes, will you be
Yes.
seconding? Thank you. Next item is temporary ordinance 31-24, an ordinance to authorize the Service Safety Director to dispense with competitive bidding and enter into a contract with the Fairfield County Board of Commissioners for Tyler Technology dispatching and records management software for the Lancaster Police and Fire Departments, to authorize a then and now certificate for those services from January 1st, 2024 and to declare an emergency. And that's coming from Safety, Councilman Pizchak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Back in 2023, the Fairfield County Commissioners purchased Tyler Tech Software. It's a dispatch software for the county. The city is also partaking in that. Our fire and police department uses it along with the county sheriff's office. So this legislation, which we're requesting 2 readings for, and Councilmember Tiener will graciously be my second, is essentially allowing the city to pick up its tab of 2024 for about $100,000, as well as, if I'm understanding this correctly, also make an appropriation for 2025. I don't know if Law Director Hall or Service Safety Director Woody, either of you would like to comment on that. I just want to make sure I understood that 100%.
Yeah, there's not an appropriation for 2025
Okay,
yet. That'll
all
be
right.
part of the budget process.
Oh, my
for
apologies.
2025, but no, that's okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's the legislation. So, if there are any questions.
Questions?
I do. I think I have some questions for the county, actually, on this. Oh, sure.
Yes, ma'am.
So I was on IT when we were doing all this, and I was under the impression that the county was taking care of this. And not only that, when was it I mean, we just found out about this, we owed for the 4 months, right? It just was brought to our attention recently.
So I've had to step into this process. The sheriff's office had not negotiations, but conversations previously. And when we were looking at renewing the contract to move to a cloud option, the commissioners were inquiring about billing for the city being a participant in this process. And that lapsed. That just did not take place, Councilwoman Tiener. And I'll own that. That we didn't do that, but it was the county's intent all along that it would be a cost-sharing arrangement because, we think that's we will purchase it, but, we would like to have the city pay for their percentage of call volume, which is right now about 35%. So I think that's a better option for council and the city versus going out and purchasing the same software at a much higher cost, which would be well over $500,000. But it was never the commissioner's intent to not seek a cost-sharing arrangement with the city.
Yeah, well, is there anybody who would like to, chiefs, were you aware of how this was working or any meetings or anything that you thought how things were working with this?
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead. I wasn't a member of the negotiation for the software to be brought in. The most that I can speak to that's hearsay, which I don't think is necessarily appropriate for council. I can just tell you what impression I was under. However, the most recent meeting that we had regarding the software, as Ms. Cordell stated, was that there would be a cost-sharing agreement. The only portion that I wasn't aware of was that it was for 2024.
That was the thing, and that's what the last 4 months, that was why, because I remember in IT, I didn't think it was going to be maybe till 2025, not 2024.
I did share that, because we are trying to be cooperative and collaborative here with the city, that if 2024 was an issue or a concern, the city would, or the county would take the burden of that. The city did benefit from the software, but many hurdles or obstacles in place to get this across the finish line. For the commissioner's agenda tomorrow, we will be signing the contract with Tyler Tech to move forward. And we've made the decision that we'll move forward whether or not this city does a cost-sharing arrangement. But if the city at some point says we're not going to do one, unfortunately, we would need to have a conversation about not continuing to make those services available to the city.
So then we
don't want to be in that position. We would rather find a good outcome
for our citizens then, right?
You guys could now, if you wanted to, purchase that dispatching software on your own. We're just saying, let's have those economies of scale and let's share. But again, I don't want there to be any hurdles or obstacles that make something difficult to get this across the finish line. So that's why I did share with our prosecutor, Amy Brown Thompson, to share with Law Director Hall that if 2024 was such an obstacle, we could move past that, and our new contract starts September 1, and we could look at making it on a go-forward basis. we would like to just put this to bed and go forward and make sure you guys have the dispatching services that you need as well as ourselves.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it was under my impression that this contract started in June of '23.
Correct.
And the county, through your ARPA money, covered our share.
We covered the cost of that contract,
first
but
year
there was,
plus.
yeah, there.
I think that should be noted.
Yeah, I'm not sure who in the county made a commitment to covering the city's share for that, so that's why I'm just saying, I'm willing to say, let's let that be water under the bridge and we can move forward. But we can't, on an ongoing basis, not have a cost-sharing relationship.
No, and I agree, and thank you for your explanation. Service Safety Director.
And I will say that I talked extensively with Administrator Cordell last week regarding this, and the legislation does state that what we're asking for is the city's portion, to pay the city's portion beginning September 1st of '24 to go with the new contract agreement. Thanks to Administrator Cordell for agreeing to that. Because I do feel, and the mayor and I talked about this before, that we do feel that the city should be paying our portion for what we are using moving forward. Again, I think that Chief Snyder put it best. Unfortunately, everyone who was around the table when all the negotiations took place are no longer here. Your police chief retired, your fire chief retired, your mayor retired, your SSD retired. So unfortunately, it was one of those things. We've seen a couple of times this year that when you have all the administrative changes happen at once, things like this are kind of falling.
Yeah, and I don't want us to have to, rehash that. That's why I'm saying I'm fine with a go-forward basis,
No, I'm just
if that
trying
makes
to
sense.
indicate that you
Yeah.
have. So the city, my understanding, will be saving money on this new system versus their old system. Is that a fair statement?
I would have to defer to Chief Snyder because I was not here to know what their budgeting was.
So in sum, this is the system that we would have likely gone with had we gone out to the market regardless. So at the time that the county used the ARPA funds to purchase Tyler Tech, we were out looking for a dispatching / CAD, which is computer-aided dispatch system anyway. It's likely we would have fallen upon Tyler Tech because our officers were out looking for software and they were impressed by Tyler Tech anyway. So correct, we would have wound up on the software, and correct, that initial bulk of the purchase to get Tyler Tech in here, to install it, to teach. Yes, ARPA funds took care of that, which is nice, so to speak. But moving forward, I think that's where I had the confusion of 24, 25, who said what, and I'd rather not speculate that on council floor because all my knowledge of that was told to me by other individuals.
Right. Let me reword it differently.
Sure.
The cost we incurred under the software being utilized in 2023 versus our cost going forward, which is approximately $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
How does that shake up what we paid in the past versus what we're going to pay?
So essentially, we're now only beholden to an annual license, where that upfront, and help me out here, Ms. Cordell, if you may, but that upfront cost to get Tyler Tech in the door and to actually put it on your servers and all of that is a major cost, almost $500,000.
Right.
So.
Yep, very good, and I appreciate that. I'm just trying to say there's some value added that the city is receiving through this process.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Wolfinger, if I may. The Tyler Tech contract for an individual purchase, just for the initial, how do we want to say, installation and bringing it on, and implementation to bring it online, is between $500,000 and $700,000 for an entity of our size. You would then have to pay annual maintenance fees to Tyler Technologies. Under the old contract, which was not on the cloud, maintenance fees are $265,000 a year. And that would have been the only thing that would have been involved with the cost sharing arrangement, would have been those fees. Now that there's a new contract moving to the cloud, those maintenance fees are approximately, it's somewhere over $300,000 a year for the redundancies and the safety that is associated with bringing that product to the cloud. You guys, is it the cloud? What was it? The cloud strike or CrowdStrike down outage that just happened? Many 911 systems across the United States went down because of that. And moving to the cloud makes a priority of bringing those systems back up. And that's why there has been a decision to move to the cloud going forward.
Thank you. Treasurer, I got one last question. Is the verbiage okay? Because we are incurring expenses from September through the end of the year.
Just as long as there's the,
The then and now, is that-
then and now set aside, council's approving those because because we're paying for a bill that it predates when we're paying for or where they can get a purchase order for. So if they're doing it in 2025's budget to, just as long as there's the then and now in there, that
Right.
covers by
I
state
just want to
audit.
make sure, because that brings more legislation in to
And-
cover that, and it's taken care of.
Sorry, and we would not be looking to invoice until September of 2025 if we're talking about the costs related to the
But we
September
still
1,
need it then.
But we
24.
still.
Yeah, I'm just saying when you would hear from us to.
Right.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
And you did mention the ARP funds, Councilman Wolfinger. It was our revenue loss ARP funds, which if you guys are familiar, I mean, we could use those funds for any county government purpose. So, I mean, it wasn't the more stricter use. So we did, make a choice to put it towards that versus other things, just
And
making
you have more
sure.
money to spend of that.
Nope, we have spent it all now.
Okay, because I was going to make some suggestions. but- I'm sorry, Treasurer Stoughton, you had a question.
I just have a couple of questions that, the thing I would ask, and I think the chief answered it, are you deriving benefit from this particular application? Is it the one you would pick? It is, right? Yes, sir. Yeah, you don't need to go back and say that all over again. So I'd ask, it says in here, the commissioners purchased, but we never heard from anyone, hey, this is truly the thing that we want. And the second part, I think the question you're trying to ask, Bob, is there an offset in the budget today? And I think we bought like the software that we have to run our current dispatching system, so I don't think we have any ongoing annual costs, as I recall. We may or not, but the cloud solution is the right solution, absolutely. And the cloud model is that you're going to be billed every year versus being able to buy something, put it on your server and forget about it, because the only way these companies make money and can invest in R&D is to charge you over the course of annually. So, from my perspective as, from a software person and certainly a spend for the city, I would, give you my full endorsement on this.
Well, thank you. I wouldn't expect anything less.
I would have told you otherwise. You know that.
All right. Any other question? Yes, one more.
So during the transit thing, we thought we were done with those ordinances and everything. Well, last minute here, we had another one that had to come in from the county. Oh, well, you guys got to do this. Now we've got this going on. Wait a minute, is there anything else before the end of the year you guys have talked at, going down the hallway, in a meeting, in the bathroom, out to lunch? Is there anything that the county's going to bring to us at the last minute? Anything else?
The
before the end of the
transit
year?
ordinances were not on our part.
Well, but
Those
I'm
were
just
on
saying,
the
that was
city's
something at the
parts.
last minute for the
Yeah,
transit
but
transaction.
they were not coming from us, though, Councilwoman. That's all I'm saying, is
Okay.
that we were waiting to receive those, and I think there were some things that may
Well,
have
I
been
just
left
found out
out of
about this on
previous
Monday, or last
legislation.
Friday, so this had to have been discussed sometime.
Again, and I will own any communication
So-
errors. The sheriff's office had begun these conversations, and then when the commissioner's office got involved, that's why you're seeing me.
Okay.
So I will apologize for any lateness of this for you. I have nothing on my desk that I'm looking to bring forward
Just
again.
wonder if there's anything else that the administration's going to have to hear.
Yeah, and again, we've already made the decision, we will go forward with this software.
Okay.
It's
Oh, I know
our
that.
pick, and happy to hear that the chief loves it, and we are happy to cost share. But if the city would prefer to do something else, that doesn't change the path that the county's on. We would just like for you to cost share if you do want to use it. So if you guys would not want to do this and want to go down a different path, you certainly can. We're not requiring you to hop onto ours.
So I know, we've discussed it in IT when I was in that, so I have no problems with it. It's just,
Sure.
want to make sure our, things are
Well,
good
I'll
here.
never say never, though. We got a few
I
months
said
left.
before the end of the year, I didn't say next year.
Not anything I'm aware of to date. How about that?
Okay.
One final chance.
Chairman Wolfinger,
Questions?
May I, please?
Yes.
So I just wanted to say two things. First of all, I apologize. There must have been some miscommunication between Amy and I. I was under the impression that we would be billed January 1, 2025. So I apologize, and I'll change that accordingly to reflect the correct date. But I also just wanted to point out that this, the original agreement came to us about mid-July. If you all remember, you only have one meeting in July. Unfortunately, there was a lag period there because you weren't available to approve any legislation. So part of that was just, the schedule and how things happened to fall. So I just wanted to be clear, that wasn't, a delay or somebody dragging their feet. It's just the way it worked.
Thank you.
Could I get a thank you? I want to thank Law Director Hall for her work on this, but I also want to thank everybody who helped with the transit process there. I know Trish's office did a lot of work, and all of you around the table too. So may not be the appropriate time, but thank you. We're very, very appreciative of. It was a very smooth transition.
I'm moving on. Just joking. That takes care of the resolutions and ordinances. Departmental updates.
Thank you. I'm sorry for taking up everybody's time tonight. It's been a couple meetings since I've had department updates, but I try to keep it within the last few weeks of what we had going on at our agency. And the three major things that we deal with that the public's most often, I guess, concerned with are narcotics, violent crime, and mental health. And I'm happy to report 3 instances that touch all 3 of those areas. In the last couple of weeks that your police department handled phenomenally well. I've said it before, there's not a week that goes by that I'm not more proud of the men and women there. They do a phenomenal job. At the presentation that we did for Directed Patrol Unit, most of you heard me speak to how our patrol division is about 99% CIT trained, which is crisis intervention training. And really, when you go to police departments, you're only going to hit about 10%, maybe, if they even give that any type of priority. But nearly all of our officers are CIT trained. And just to show you how that plays out, a couple weeks ago, we had a barricade situation where an individual was, when I got the call, was shooting rounds outside of his residence. Our patrol officers obviously immediately responded, sent the drones up to try to get a vantage point. He shot at the drones, and our hostage negotiators were on the way. Well, that armed individual that was shooting at the drone, shooting outside of his residence, was spoken to by our responding patrol officers, and he came out of the house voluntarily. No threats, no harm to the officers, no harm to himself. And I believe SSD Woody was on the receiving end of a text when I said that all ended pretty phenomenally well from our officers. So I'm very proud of them for that. And I think the public needs to hear some of those things because they're not necessarily, we put out news updates and media updates, but you try to be very careful about what information you're putting out. So I want to put the point of emphasis on the officers there, not necessarily the individual that definitely needed help in that situation. So very proud of them for that. When it comes to narcotics, for the past 3 or 4 months, we've been working a very high value target that skips back and forth from Columbus area to our area. And to give some perspective on how much fentanyl he's bringing into our area or was bringing into our area, is about 3 or 4 ounces a day. And that's an everyday operation, which if you take that out over just the course of the investigation, it's about 20 pounds of fentanyl, an enormous amount. So we just we just arrested him this past weekend in Whitehall. And he was arrested with firearms. And these are dangerous individuals that are supplying drugs to our community, supplying weapons to our community. So he was put away. And that's by no shape or form an end to drugs in the Lancaster area. But it is, again, a major point of emphasis for our department. And I just want to give credit to those officers that are in the major crimes unit with our officers, our directed patrol unit. Sergeant Sims, who's here tonight just to do the special detail for city council, is a sergeant of the community services unit, and he runs that directed patrol unit. And while he's here, I'd like to embarrass him and tell him how proud I am of his unit and what they do. So that's the second major point of emphasis that we touched on the last couple weeks. And this one was a little bit more popular. I fielded more calls than usual on this incident, but we had a shooting incident at Timbertop Apartments last week, or August 16th to be exact, at around 3 in the morning. And just to show you how law enforcement works and how hard these cases are to solve, we had some juveniles that did some things they were not supposed to be doing in that community. However, when we got the call, we were told by the resident that she was shot at. And our officers responded. Something didn't seem right. Our detectives responded. They did their job. Long story short, they got the resident to admit that she was the one that shot at the juveniles. So despite how that report comes in and despite what people tell us to our face, our detective bureau, when it comes to violent crime, takes these things seriously. And I'm very proud of those guys, because I hate to say it, but trust me, there's a lot of agencies that go up and it's, open book, closed book, done, and they don't pay any attention to any of the details. And these guys, these men and women, pay attention to the details. So that's all in the last couple of weeks. So again, very proud of these individuals. I think they should be recognized, and I want the public to hear it first. So that's all I had.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, Steve's not here. We played the fire department again.
I knew that.
Sunday. And yet again, 2 years in a row, we beat the fire department. So clearly we are the more talented, athletic, and skilled public safety agency.
How much did you raise?
We raised more than last year. I want to, well, Brian, do you know?
With the recent deposits from the 50/50 and all that, it was almost $11,000. Wow.
There we go. Nice. $11,000, and that's for the Lancaster Public Education System, which is, it's a phenomenal board to be on. I'm very happy I'm on it, but that group does very good. You're scowling, Amanda, and I just want to point out she was a firefighter supporter yesterday, and her team lost, so she's scowling at me right now. Yeah.
They lost because they go to Kroger's too much.
Hey, Chief.
I agree.
Chief, on that point, I just want to point out I'm wearing blue today. So.
You are, yeah. I'm not. I'll do it after the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any other departmental updates?
If I may, Chairman, I will just add, again, thanks to the police department and the fire department. Again, they're volunteering to go out there and play one another in fun. But yes, you've won twice, Chief. But again, it is for a good cause, and they are out raising funds for our community and our education foundation. So again, thanks to all of them for doing that. It was very entertaining, to say the least, and I'm happy to see that you and Sergeant Sims both made it to work today.
Anybody else? Okay. Tonight's meeting prep by President Pro Tem Schoonover.
It's my turn. So because everyone's been looking at me funny, like, why is Corey sitting over there? So the mayor's out of town on vacation, which changes the structure, meaning Mr. Porter sitting over in the mayor's seat. I get to move over here, and I've sat in this room for 7.5 years, and I'm still suffering from anxiety on, running this meeting coming up. So, and then we have a long finance meeting to ramp up my anxiety. And then we turn around and we have a special presentation from the IT department. We also have a public hearing. And then, at no fault of her own, we also have a rookie clerk tonight. So Liz Martins from the prosecutor's office is filling in. And so we're going to kill it over here. If I throw some sarcastic jokes, it's just to make me feel better about the whole situation. Okay? So that's, I believe, all that I have.
Thank you. And any other items for Finance Committee? Anybody wishes to bring up? Do I hear anything from you, Mr. Ailes?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I'll second that. I'm still
Can
on.
you second it?
Still
since you're-
second, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
All right, regular meeting of council start at 6:50.
Hello, I'm Kevin. Ken Culver with the Lancaster Playhouse. Lancaster Playhouse is dedicated to the theater arts and strives to create an experience that will entertain, inspire, and challenge our audiences, actors, and volunteers. As a nonprofit, we really count on local support. That's why we are once again so excited to be chosen as one of the Buckeye Cares recipients. This month, Buckeye will make a generous donation with every car they sell, and we couldn't be more grateful. Thank you, Buckeye, for your support.
The Frankie Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our two locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster and 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.
Star tight end that said hi. Greg. I have a picture somewhere. I'm going to pull that out and show it to you.
Oh, you should.
I do. Oh, yeah.
I never start on time. Miss Teener. You ready? I'll let you get to your seat. Promise.
I'm not sneezing and my nose isn't running since you're not sitting here tonight.
You're welcome. Well, with that, I have a little prayer before we start. Lord, help us make wise decisions today. And if we can't all agree, at least let us disagree with a smile. Keep us fair, focused, and maybe even a little funny. Amen.
Very good.
I'm going to call the meeting to order and Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll start with roll call, please.
Mr. Ehlers. Mr. Ailes.
Here.
Mr. Bizjack.
Here.
Mrs. Kreitz. Here. Mrs. Hoop.
Here.
Mr. Luchtenberg.
Here.
Mr. Schoonover.
Here.
Ms. Teener.
Here.
Mr. Wing.
Here.
Mr. Wolfinger.
Here.
Do we have a motion and a second to excuse Councilman Ehlers?
So moved, Mr. President.
Mr.
Second.
Bizjack. Mr. Luchtenberg. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Let the record reflect that Mr. Ehlers is excused. Reading and disposal of the journal.
Regular meeting minutes dated August 12th, 2024.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to accept the reading and disposing of the journal.
Second.
We have a first and a second to approve the reading and disposal of the journal. Reports of city officials.
No, we need a vote.
All in favor?
Need a vote.
Yeah.
That's okay.
All in
That's all right.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's my bad, I'm sorry.
Now, we have approval. So someone help me out with the script, and that wasn't on the script.
I forgot.
We're starting off awesome. Okay, it's fine. All right. Reports to city officials.
Email dated August 12th, 2024 regarding council meeting attendance submitted by Mr. Ehlers. Email dated August 13th, 2024 regarding finance committee minutes submitted by Mr. Wolfinger. Series of emails dated August 15th, 2024 regarding special council meeting and training on September 14th submitted by Mr. Porter and City Associates. Series of emails dated August 16th, 2024 regarding a requested presentation to council submitted by council members and city leaders. Email dated August 24th, 2024 regarding finance committee agenda submitted by Mr. Wolfinger. Email dated August 25th, 2024 regarding the posted council agenda submitted by Mr. Ailes.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to accept the reports of city officials.
Second.
We have a first and second to, you're good, we're all, to accept the reports of city officials. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Communications.
Email dated August 19th, 2024 regarding notification of filing of Auditor of State report submitted by Auditor of State Keith Faber. Email dated August 19th, 2024 regarding an information request submitted by David Abel, Research Analyst with the Claims Center. Email dated August 20th, 2024 regarding the 2023 Tourism Economic Impact Report submitted by Jonette Haberfield, Executive Director of the Fairfield County Visitors and Convention Bureau. Notice to legislative authority of a new liquor license to Ambets Post 1895 Guy E. Lee, located at 700 South Maple Street, Lancaster, Ohio 43130. Submitted by the Ohio Division of Liquor Control, 6606 Tussing Road, Reynoldsburg, Ohio 43068.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to accept the communications.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to accept the communications. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, special presentations. We have, special presentation.
Mr. Porter had something really quickly.
Sorry.
Yes, thank you, President Pro Tem. We have a birthday this evening, well, actually August 29th. So I would like everybody to wish Councilmember Wing, who is bright red by him right now, happy birthday. So will we all join in singing happy birthday to Councilmember Wing? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Here's your cake. Happy birthday, dear Michael. Happy birthday to you. So how old are you, Mr. Councilmember Wing?
28 on Thursday.
28 years old, folks. Yeah. Congratulations. I won't see that age ever again.
All right, we also have a presentation from the City IT Department. So here with us this evening is Mr. Mark Starr.
All right, afternoon. Again, for those you don't know, my name is Mark Starr. I'm the IT Director for the City of Lancaster. I'm here tonight to give you a quick synopsis of all the wonderful things the IT Department does for the city. I'm going to be throwing out a bunch of numbers. You don't have to take notes or will not be a test. I will email everybody up here my little cheat sheet afterwards, so in case you have questions, you can get a hold of me. Let's start with the personnel. We have 6 people within the department, the IT Director, myself, and Assistant IT Director. Those are the 2 that are on the management scale. And then we have an administrative assistant and 3 IT specialists that do all the true day-to-day work. I'm very proud of the work they do for the city. We are the IT department, so we do everything that you would think of IT related: PCs, printers, scanners, monitors, software, office. We use department software. We have over 14 unique different department software that is used throughout the city that we support, or we work with the vendor of the software to support. Emails, emails, emails. That's all we do most of the days. So that's an important part. Something else people might not realize is the city, we have 29 different physical locations throughout the city that are connected to our network that we support. So that includes all the water plants, gas departments, substations, major buildings, firehouses, all down the line. To connect all those, the city installs, maintains, and supports almost 30 miles of fiber optics that we have ran throughout the city. When you run a fiber optics, if you pull a cable that's a mile long and it's actually what's called a 24 fiber, then that's considered 24 fiber miles. So in total, we have over 2,400 fiber miles throughout the city of fiber optics that we can use. If you compare that to the water department, they have 207 miles of mains, and the gas department has 264 miles of mains. So we have quite an extensive network, just like they do. Total PCs and emails, we have over 1,300 IP devices. Anything that's connected to our network is considered an IP device. Of that, over 400 are PCs. And as I mentioned already, we support over 500 distinct email boxes for different people throughout the city. One of the other options that we're responsible for that people don't realize is tornado sirens. We have 9 sirens within the city. We have replaced 4 of those since 2022, and we'll be replacing 4 more within the next 2 years. We have to install them, maintain them. The actual county EMA sets them off, but we do all the testing and maintenance. Phone system. We have a citywide phone system that has over 380 extensions on it. And just last week, I did a call report, and we had over 9,500 calls go through that system for the whole city last week. Cameras. The city has over 145 cameras throughout the city in different departments for mainly safety purposes. We support those as far as setting up, maintaining, recording, and getting recordings off of there if something happens. So again, I'm a numbers man, so let's talk budgets now. We're what's called a special revenue department. So we have general fund departments in the city, we have enterprise departments, and then we have special revenue departments. We're one of those, which means when I come up with my budget, I have to come up with a chargeback number that I charge each other department for their IT services they receive from us. I have an extensive spreadsheet that I go through every year that comes up with those numbers. If you're really into numbers and want to be bored for a couple hours, you can stop down and see me, we'll go over that. That whole process, every 4 to 5 years, we're audited by an outside source to make sure I'm not fudging the numbers or just charging the police department more just because I don't like them or something. Total city budget this year was just over $173 million. The IT budget was $1.1 million. That's 0.64%. All right, not even 1%. Let's compare that. Total county budget this year was, the best numbers I can come up with is $236 million. Their IT budget was $2.4 million, or 1.02%. Almost twice of what we spent. Total City of Columbus budget, $2.18 billion. They spent $57 million, or they budgeted $57 million, or 2.61% for IT. And if you know what's going on in Columbus, they're spending a lot more than that right now, I guarantee you. Another number I like throwing out there is, let's just pick one of our departments, for example, water pollution. Their budget was $12.5 million. So you can think of them as a company that's running a $12.5 million budget. Their IT reimbursement for this year was $41,600, or 0.33% of their budget. So overall, I think the city gets a really good deal on the money they spend on the IT. Can we spend more? Should we spend more? That's always a question. If you talk to me, obviously the answer is always going to be yes. But those are the numbers that we work with today. Any questions?
I have a question.
Just one quick, I don't know if it's a quick question, but I do have a question. What are some, if you had a magic wand, what are some new technologies that, we're seeing on the horizon, be it, AI technologies or cloud technologies? What are some technologies you would like to see the city adapt and use to better our services for the community?
As came up with the police department software discussion, and Tom mentioned, one of the best solutions for us is a cloud solution. A lot of our other department software, like utility collections and stuff, are recently moved to a cloud solution. That takes the data out of our possession and puts it up in the cloud. Mm-hmm. So if something like Columbus happens, they're not going to have this data here because we don't have it here. So a cloud solution from the cybersecurity issue is a big hotspot right now. And then, of course, just, email security, phishing, hacking, encryption, all that stuff that's out there. We have to support that. We practice all common industry standards at this time. There's always more vendors and more stuff out there that you can throw at it. So it's a balancing act of, if you gave me an extra $1 million, could I spend it? Sure, but are we going to get that much more protection out of it? That's the question.
Thank you.
I have one. If anyone else does. So you do the maintenance for the tornado sirens.
Correct.
You're replacing them. How much does that cost to replace one?
We just, like I said, we're going to do 4. I just got a
Yeah.
quote for 4. The physical hardware, just to buy the sirens, 4 of them, is $140,000 around there. And then, of course, you got to pay someone to install them, put them up, program them. You have the electric hookup for them. So this year or next year, I budgeted, I have a capital improvement fund that pays for that. I put an additional $50,000 in it for all the installation of those 4.
Okay. And how long till you have to replace them again?
The ones we're replacing now are coming up on 20 years old.
Okay.
So I would say 15 to 20-year age limit on those.
Thank you.
Yep.
You mentioned Columbus. How vulnerable are we to have a catastrophic situation that Columbus had? Otherwise, I think you're going to answer how much is in the cloud. I mean, what's your assessment of that?
I wish I knew, Tom. I always tell people that if they ask about that, if there's somebody out there that really wants to get into our network, they're going to get in. They're going to spend, if they have millions of dollars on their side and resources to do it, and they just constantly keep hitting our network with different things, they'll get in somehow. The question is, what after? What do we have that they want? The less we have physically located here and more in the cloud, that alleviates our danger factor. So
And how much of our data is in the cloud versus not in the cloud? Percentage-wise, a ballpark figure.
From a department point of view, the data that I think people would be interested in, like utility records, police records, I would say close to 70% right now is in the cloud. And once police goes to the cloud, that would probably bring it up to 95%. Basically, the only thing that's not in the cloud right now is just the day-to-day business emails, or emails are already cloud, but like documents, notes from stuff, files. So it's not what I consider, stuff the hackers will be after.
Other than the fact if it's an email environment and we attach a file, it's stored in the cloud, but that file is now live on an email, so we're vulnerable to that?
If it's out, yeah, if it's on your, if it's in the cloud, if you have a copy of it on a computer and that computer gets hacked, they would have access to it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Starr? No? All right, thank you very much, appreciate it. All right, do we have any petitions or memorials? No? All right, this time the meeting is set aside for voters and taxpayers to address council. Now, we have a public hearing here in a little bit. That is not what this portion is for. So anybody that would like to address council outside of the discussion that we're going to have during the public hearing. It was one thing that went my way so far, so I appreciate you very much. All right, reports of standing committees.
Finance Committee minutes dated August 12th, 2024, submitted by Mr. Wolfinger.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to accept the reports of standing committees.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the reports of standing committees. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, reports of special committees.
There are none.
Okay, public hearing. Thank you again for having a public hearing on my first try.
Well, you got the gamut right.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, it's not planned. I did not pick the vacation dates.
I don't blame you. I'll have to talk to the mayor about that later. Okay, so we have let me read my script. Are we having any public hearings tonight?
Yes, tonight we have a public hearing on temporary ordinance 2424 regarding amending the City of Lancaster zoning map to establish zoning for the 5.664 acres proposed for annexation in Pleasant Township.
Okay. And that is through economic development with Mrs. Hoop as the sponsor. Do you have anything you want to go over first?
I don't
No?
think so. I think it's just to allow the engineers to amend or establish the zoning to residential multifamily.
You're all good with that? Okay. All right, so I'm going to read our rules here. So first, we ask everyone to limit their comments to the issue that we're here for, specifically the ordinance that was just read, and speak no more than 5 minutes apiece. Proponents that are for the ordinance will have the opportunity to comment first, and then we'll have opponents come up second. Finally, after that, there will be a rebuttal opportunity. So as long as you spoke in the first round, you can come back up during rebuttal. Anyone who wishes to speak, there's going to be a clipboard at the podium. You're going to sign in on that and then state your name when you come up to speak. So with that being said, we'll open the public hearing on temporary ordinance 2424, and then I'll ask for any proponents to come up first. Stephanie, is there the silver clipboard up there? I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
Good evening, members of council. My name is David Hodge. I'm a zoning and land use lawyer with a law firm called Underhill and Hodge. I am the agent petitioner for the annexation and also counsel for the LLC that's requesting the rezoning. I was here, I don't know when, 6-8 months ago on the zoning on the adjacent piece of property. I think it was about 45 acres. That is putting the property, this request tonight is putting this 5.5 acre or so property in conformance with the zoning that we did on the 45 acre adjacent piece here some months back. It zones it to a straight district under your relatively new zoning code. It also, the zoning requested is consistent with the existing township zoning. Slight nuance differences, but the township zoning is a broad zoning that allows both single-family residential and multifamily residential. This district in Lancaster allows those same uses. The proposal is to allow some mix of both single-family and multifamily residential. Here tonight with a unanimous recommendation of approval from your planning commission here a month or so back, and respectfully request that that council ultimately, when you have the opportunity to vote, also approve the zoning. I know that Lancaster needs housing. I've been working my tail off on bringing some housing to Lancaster for the last year and a half or so. It's not been an easy road. I know that there's housing going on in certain places, but I've been just about all over the market to attract developers to the property in conjunction with the very capable administration here, and had a lot of help along the way to get that going. Everybody always takes the meetings and packs the room full of everybody in that realm to facilitate that kind of growth. So we think it's an appropriate zoning. Done a lot of work to get here tonight, both in terms of landscape architects, engineering, a traffic impact study to determine the access points and the road improvements necessary on Sheridan. Still have a ways to go, and hope to have this zoning ultimately approved and bring some development to fruition here in the spring. I'll stop there, but if anyone has any questions, of course, I'll do my best to answer those.
Sure, thank you. Any questions? No? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Do we have anyone else here to speak as a proponent for the ordinance? All right, seeing none, do we have any opponents to the temporary ordinance? Anybody opposed to the legislation? Seeing none, we will go back to you. If you have any other comments, great. If not, you don't have to speak again.
I have nothing to add, but if anybody's got a question for me, anything, shoot, and I'll do my best to answer it.
I think we're good. Thank you very much. All right, so we had no opponents the first round, so there is no second round for that. And it looks like we can officially close out the public hearing on temporary ordinance 2424. Thank you. All right, we are going to move on to what I consider the meat of the meeting. with the reading of ordinances, starting with the third reading of, as soon as I'm on the right page, third reading of temporary resolution 7624.
A resolution to accept the recommendation of the Tax Incentive Review Council for the continuance of the 2006 Edie Road Tax Increment Financing Agreement, the 2023 Timber Top Tax Increment Financing Agreement, and Lancaster's community reinvestment areas pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 5709.85C1 and E. Coming out of Finance Committee, offered by Mr. Wolfinger, seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Mr. Wolfinger.
I make a motion to pass this legislation.
Second.
Your second for him.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm second.
Okay. Thank you.
So you made a motion. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to keep my notes current. Basically, this is the annual report that our city auditor goes to the county, makes comments about the various tax incentive programs within the city, and they're listed there, and they are approved by this tax incentive council, and this is routine annual legislation.
All right. Any other discussion? I get a roll call, please.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizjack?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz? Yes. Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Luftenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0. Temporary resolution 8324.
A resolution to authorize the Service Safety Director to enter into a development agreement with Urban Restorations for its project known as the Shoemaker. Coming out of Finance Committee, offered by Mr. Wolfinger, seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Mr. Wolfinger.
I make a motion that we pass this legislation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass temporary resolution 8324. Any discussion?
Again, this is basically working with an agreement with a new project that's going to rehab an old building in downtown Lancaster. We've been waiting for it for a long, long time, and this is the next step to move forward with it.
Any other discussion? We'll call the roll.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizjack?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz? Yes. Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Luftenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Motion to pass temporary resolution 8324 passes 9-0. That is all for third reading. Now we have second reading of temporary resolution 8424.
A resolution to increase and decrease appropriations in the Police and Fire Levy Fund 2047 for Lancaster Fire Department overtime. Coming out of Safety Committee, offered by Mr. Bizjack, seconded by Ms. Teener.
Mr. Bizjack.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that council suspend its rules and waive the third reading for resolution temporarily numbered 84-24.
Second.
We have a first and second to suspend the rules and waive the third reading of temporary resolution 8424. Discussion.
Not at this time, Mr. President.
Call the roll.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizjack?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Luftenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Motion to suspend passes 9-0. Mr. Bizjack.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 84-24.
Second.
We have a first and motion, first and second to pass and enter upon the record temporary resolution 8424. Any discussion?
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, this is a simple resolution of transferring $100,000 from the Fire Building and Maintenance Fund to the Overtime Fund. I just want to emphasize again that this is, these are not new tax dollars, and this is just a one-time transferal due to unforeseen and unanticipated staffing matters that have come up. That is all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If none, we'll call the roll.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizjack?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Lechtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0. Temporary Resolution 8524.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and to amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor in the general fund 1001 to fund the city's annual contribution to the Fairfield County Dog Shelter. Coming out of Finance Committee, offered by Mr. Wolfinger, seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Second of three readings.
Second of three readings on Temporary Resolution 8524. Next up's Temporary Resolution 8624.
A resolution to authorize the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for construction of the Boving Road, South Broad Street, and Hamburg Road Improvement Program paving project. Coming out of Public Works, offered by Ms. Teener, seconded by Mr. Lechtenberg.
Mrs. Teener.
Second of three readings, please.
Second of three readings on Temporary Resolution 8624. Temporary Resolution 8724.
A resolution to authorize the Service Safety Director to apply for a grant through the Ohio Public Works Commission to fund the Arbor Valley Drive Rehabilitation Project. Coming out of Public Works, offered by Ms. Teener, seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Ms. Teener.
Second of three readings, please.
Second of three readings on Temporary Resolution 8724. Temporary Resolution 8824.
A resolution to authorize the Service Safety Director to enter into design pre-construction services contracts with various consultants for the East Main Street Improvement Project, PID 122006, to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and to amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor in the general fund 1001. Coming out of Public Works, offered by Ms. Teener, seconded by Mr. Lechtenberg.
Ms. Teener.
Second of three readings, please.
We have second of three readings on Temporary Resolution 8824. Temporary Resolution 8924.
A resolution to authorize the Service Safety Director to enter into an engineering agreement for construction, administration, and inspection services for the East Main Street Sewer Separation and Ann Court Drainage Improvements Phase 1 project. Coming out of Water Pollution Control, offered by Mr. Wing, seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Mr. Wing.
Second of three readings, please.
Second of three readings on 8924. Moving on to Temporary Resolution 9024.
A resolution to authorize the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract to construct the East Main Street Sewer Separation and Ann Court Drainage Improvements Phase 1 project. Coming out of Water Pollution Control, offered by Mr. Wing, seconded by Ms. Teener.
Mr. Wing.
Second of three readings, please.
Second of three readings on Temporary Resolution 9024. Temporary Resolution 9124.
A resolution to increase receipts in Fund 8058, Violet Township, City of Lancaster, JED, amend the certificate of other sources with the county auditor, and appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor in the Violet Township, City of Lancaster, JED Fund 8058 and Income Tax Fund 2016. Coming out of Finance Committee, offered by Mr. Wolfinger, seconded by Mr. Ehlers.
Mr. Wolfinger.
Second of three readings.
Second of three readings on Temporary Resolution 9124. Temporary Resolution 9224.
A resolution to authorize the City of Lancaster to apply for a .gov domain migration grant, a cybersecurity software and services grant, and to execute contracts as required. Coming out of Administrative Services Committee, offered by Mr. Lechtenberg, seconded by Mr. Bizjack.
Mr. Lechtenberg.
Second of three readings.
You have second of three readings on Temporary Resolution 9224. Moving on to Temporary Resolution 9324.
A resolution to authorize dispensing with competitive bidding for the purchase of reagents for the AU 480 drug testing analyzer at the municipal court due to a sole source provider. Coming out of Law Committee, offered by Mrs. Kreitz, seconded by Mr. Wolfinger.
Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes, this is the second of 3 readings.
Second of 3 readings on temporary resolution 9324. We have now resolution temporary 9424.
A resolution to authorize the Service Safety Director to enter into an agreement with the design professionals at Schooley Caldwell for the City Hall Rehabilitation Project. Coming out of Law Committee, offered by Mrs. Kreitz, seconded by Mr. Bizjack.
Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes, thank you. Mr. President Pro Tem, I would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the 3rd reading of resolution temporarily numbered 94-24.
Second.
We have a first and a second motion to suspend the rules and waive the 3rd reading of 9424. Discussion.
Nothing at this time.
Anyone else? No? If none, call the roll.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizjack?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Luchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Motion to suspend passes 9-0. Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes, Mr. President Pro Tem, I would like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 94-24.
Second.
Motion and a second to pass temporary resolution 9424. Discussion.
Yes, thank you. Just as a reminder, Schooley Caldwell was previously retained by the city to provide design services for the City Hall restoration project. The scope of that project has since changed, and they're focusing on the exterior for now. That's it.
Any other discussion, questions? Call the roll.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizjack?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Luchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 9424 passes 9-0. Temporary resolution 9524.
A resolution to authorize the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the City Hall renovation project. Offered by Law Committee, coming out of Law Committee, offered by Mrs. Kreitz, seconded by Mr. Wolfinger.
Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes, thank you, President Pro Tem Schoonover. I would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the 3rd reading of resolution temporarily numbered 95-24.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the 3rd reading of temporary resolution 9524. Any discussion?
Nothing yet.
Call the roll.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizjack?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Luchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Suspension of the 3rd reading of temporary resolution 9524 passes 9-0. Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes, thank you, President Pro Tem Schoonover. I would like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 95-24.
Second.
We have a first and a second to pass temporary resolution 9524. Any discussion?
Nothing. No, thank you.
Anyone else? Call the roll.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizjack?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Luchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 9524 passes 9-0. Is on to first readings. First reading of temporary resolution 9624.
A resolution to amend the Certificate of Other Sources and Appropriations, increase receipts, and appropriate from the unencumbered balance in the Police and Fire Levy Fund 2047. Coming out of Safety Committee, offered by Mr. Bizjack, seconded by Ms. Teener.
Mr. Bizjack.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the first of 3 readings.
First of 3 readings on temporary resolution 9624. Temporary resolution 9724.
A resolution to authorize the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract for construction of the Tiki Lane Booster Station Improvement Project. Coming out of Water Pollution Control, offered by Mr. Wing, seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Mr. Wing.
First of 2 readings.
First of 2 readings
on temporary resolution 9724. Temporary resolution 9824.
A resolution to authorize the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract for construction of the South Water Plant Concentrate Booster Pumps Project, coming out of water pollution control, offered by Mr. Wing, seconded by Ms. Teamer.
Mr. Wing.
First of 3 readings, please.
First of 3 readings on temporary resolution 9824. Temporary resolution 9924.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance in the Engineering Fund 1900 for additional unexpected costs related to staffing changes and the addition of an administrative assistant position, coming out of Administrative Services, offered by Mr. Leuchtenberg, seconded by Mr. Wolfinger.
Mr. Leuchtenberg.
Yes, we'd like to make this the first of 2 readings. Our finance meeting discussion earlier.
First of 2 readings for temporary resolution 9924. Are there any more resolutions to come before council tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to the reading of ordinances, beginning with the 3rd reading, temporary ordinance 2424.
An ordinance to amend the zoning map subject to passage of an annexation of 5.664 plus or minus acres in Pleasant Township and to declare an emergency. Coming out of Economic Development, offered by Mrs. Hoop, seconded by Mr. Wing.
Mrs. Hoop.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 2424.
Second.
We have a first and second to pass temporary ordinance 2424. Any discussion?
No.
Okay. Anybody else? Motion to pass, call the roll.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizjack?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Leuchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 2424 passes 9-0. Temporary ordinance 2524.
An ordinance to authorize the mayor to enter into a school compensation agreement for income tax sharing between Amanda Clear Creek Local School District and the City of Lancaster. Coming out of Law Committee, offered by Mrs. Kreitz, seconded by Mr. Bizjack.
Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes, thank you. President Pro Tem, I would like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record ordinance temporarily numbered 25-24.
Second.
We have a first and second motion to pass temporary ordinance 2524. Any discussion?
Yes, just briefly. This approves a school compensation agreement between the city and Amanda Clear Creek and related to the property where the Google plant is located in Rockmill Industrial Park.
Thank you. Any other questions? Call the roll.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizjack?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Leuchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 2524 passes 9-0. The second reading of temporary ordinance 2724.
An ordinance to accept the final plat for the Timbertop subdivision, coming out of Code and Zoning, offered by Mr. Ehlers, seconded by Mrs. Hoop.
Yes.
Yeah, we're doing Mrs. Hoop.
Yes, it's just second of 3 readings.
Second of 3 readings on temporary ordinance 2724. We'll move on to first reading of temporary ordinance 2824.
An ordinance to amend permanent ordinance 3323, the non-union pay ordinance, coming out of Administrative Services, offered by Mr. Leuchtenberg, seconded by Mr. Bizjack.
Mr. Leuchtenberg.
And this would be the first of 2 readings, as discussed previously.
First of 2 readings on temporary ordinance 2824, temporary ordinance 2924.
An ordinance to authorize the mayor to accept 2.147 plus or minus acres of property identified as a portion of Fairfield County Auditor Parcel Number 05350040000 from Serba Solutions US, Inc., formerly known as Retrieve Technologies Incorporated, and to declare an emergency. Coming out of Law Committee, offered by Mrs. Kreitz, seconded by Mr. Wolfinger.
Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes, thank you, President Pro Tem. I would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third readings of ordinance temporarily numbered 29-24.
Second.
We have a first motion and a second to suspend the rules, waive the second and third reading of 29-24. Any discussion?
Yes, thank you. Just briefly, as discussed during the Finance Committee meeting, this is to accept donated property from Service Solutions for anticipated traffic need improvements. And SERBA is in the process of expanding their facility and would like to move quickly on this so it doesn't delay their expansion.
Any other comments on the suspension? We can go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizjack?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Leuchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Motion to suspend passes 9-0. Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes, thank you, President Pro Tem. I would like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record ordinance temporarily numbered 29-24.
We have a second on that?
Second.
Motion and a second to pass temporary ordinance 29-24. Any other discussion? No? Call the roll.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizjack?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Leuchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Motion to pass temporary ordinance 29-24 passes 9-0. Temporary ordinance 30-24.
An ordinance, one, authorizing the City of Lancaster, Ohio, the city, to enter into an amendment to a natural gas supply agreement, a tax certificate or tax regulatory agreement, a bond purchase agreement, and a continuing disclosure agreement or commitment, all as necessary, and any and all other agreements that may be deemed necessary or appropriate, the agreements. Two, authorizing the use of certain financial and demographic information of the city in a preliminary official statement and an official statement and continuing disclosure in connection with the issuance of revenue bonds by the Lancaster Port Authority. And three, authorizing the payment of all necessary professional services related to the agreements, the preliminary official statement, and the official statement, all for the purpose of the purchase and distribution of natural gas by the city and related to the issuance of revenue bonds by the Lancaster Port Authority to assist the city with its acquisition of a supply of natural gas, including additional volumes for sale to the city, and to declare an emergency. Coming out of Finance Committee, offered by Mr. Wolfinger, seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Mr. Wolfinger.
First of three readings. Excuse me.
First of three readings on temporary ordinance 30-24. Moving on to temporary ordinance 31-24.
An ordinance to authorize the Service Safety Director to dispense with competitive bidding and enter into a contract with the Fairfield County Board of Commissioners for Tyler Technologies dispatching and records management software for the Lancaster Police and Fire Departments, to authorize a then and now certificate for those services from January 1st, 2024, and to declare an emergency. Coming out of Safety Committee, offered by Mr. Bizjack, seconded by Ms. Teener.
Mr. Bizjack.
Thank you, Mr. President. This will be the first of two readings.
First of two readings on temporary ordinance 31-24. Do we have any other ordinances to come tonight? I see none. So we'll move on to tabled legislation, which I see none. Any?
No.
Okay. Sorry, I'm skipping right over you. Unfinished business. Anybody have any unfinished business they would like to discuss? No? Moving on to new business. Mr. Porter, you want to discuss that?
Yes. Thank you, Council President Pro Tem. As you know, we have had a circumstance in which our council clerk has become a council member, and we've had very graciously individuals who have been filling in, and thank you this evening for doing so. We did post this position. We had two applicants, and in evaluating those applications, one stood out for their qualifications, and that was Anitra Scott. And at this time, we would have to seek council approval for the appointment of a new clerk.
Any discussion at all? Everybody knows we've been looking. Anitra was here last week.
Yes.
Liz has filled in admirably, but I don't think she wants to do it every other week. No. So Anitra has stepped up to follow that sword, and I would, at this point, like to make a motion that we appoint Anitra as the clerk of council.
I make a motion that we appoint Anitra as council clerk.
Second?
Let Becky make the motion, and Mrs. Kreitz the second, and then roll call vote on that.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizjack?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Leuchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
All right.
And I would just want us all, once again, to say thank you to our former clerk, Council Member Kreitz.
Thank you.
Are we gonna have like song and cake and stuff next time?
I'll be happy to do that.
We did it to Michael. We could like bring Anitra on with something and embarrass her a little bit.
Of course.
Yeah, okay. Any other new business we want to discuss? No? Perfect. And can I get announcement of the scheduled meetings, please?
Next regular sessions of council, September 9th at 6:30 PM, September 23rd at 6:30 PM. Upcoming special meetings, council meeting Saturday, September 14th at 9 AM, City Hall, 1897 Conference Room. Upcoming committee meetings for the next 30 days, Service Committee, September 6th at 8 AM in the City Hall, 1897 Conference Room. Finance Committee, September 9th at 6 PM in Council Chambers. Administrative Services, September 8th at 8 AM in the City Hall, 1897 Conference Room. And Finance Committee, September 23rd at 6 PM in Council Chambers.
Thank you very much. Are there any bills?
One for MNCO, $58.60 for publication of legislation.
Mr. President Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion to pay bills.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pay the bill. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're going to pay the bill. Any need for executive session? The only thing that I don't have to do on my first try, so thank you again for that.
Actually, Mr. President, no.
Yeah, right. I would like to have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. President Pro Tem, you have to say the whole thing.
Sorry.
Mr. President Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
First and second to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Sign your legislation.
Yeah, sign your legislation, please.
Just trying to help out there, Cory.
Right?